am live. I read The Invisible Way by Reshad Feild. It was published in 1979, and it is a love story, a story about love and death, he says here. I am here in chapter 7, and I stopped it before the end. Reshad has met Noor, and they were in Glastonbury. No, at Stonehenge. They went to Stonehenge to see the sunrise, and then they got very wet, and they went into a little inn. When we said we would love to have supper, she seemed relieved and eventually wrote our names down in the register. "Mind your heads," she said as she led us upstairs. "The beams are very low and people often bump their heads." She led us to a room at the end of the corridor, turned on the electric fire and informed us that dinner would be ready at 7 o'clock. The room was well kept. The bathroom next door had an old-fashioned bath on legs that held so much water you could sink right into it with only your face showing. We soaked until we were warm again. Afterwards, we slept. I think both of us wanted to be quiet. I began to feel depressed over dinner. I suppose it was inevitable, really. So much had gone on that it was obvious the pace could not continue. Noor picked up on it very quickly and asked me what was the matter. "It seems like we've reached the end of a cycle," I said. "Everything has happened so fast, and before we know it, we'll be with John. I can't seem to get used to the speed of change. Do you understand?" "Of course," she replied, "but I've been with Elizabeth long enough not to be surprised at anything. You wouldn't believe what went on in that house in the past 3 years. She hardly ever went out, but people turned up continuously in the most unlikely circumstances. It was like theatre. First, there would be a letter or a telephone call, then someone would arrive at the front door out of the blue. What kept me there was my own longing to learn something useful. I feel the same way now, and perhaps if you looked at it that way, you wouldn't be so depressed. Certainly, it is the end of the cycle, but look at it another way. It's also the beginning of another. We're both going to see this man, called John, who is dying of cancer. We're going because you were told by your teacher in the beginning that you needed to meet a woman teacher. Well, you did meet one in the form of Elizabeth. And things have been arranged in such a way that we are together, and we are both on our way to Wales. What more do you want?" She laughed, and for a moment the heaviness lifted. "Tell me more about Elizabeth," I said. "I didn't have much time, and yet both our lives have certainly been altered from the moment we met her." "No one knows very much," Noor replied. "She has always been a bit of a mystery, even to me, and I suppose that I was closer to her than most. She is so totally self-contained that it is hard to really get to know her. She hinted at certain things, ideas and so on, and left me to work out what she was trying to get at. A small group meets in the sitting room once a week, but she never let me go in. She explained that the people in the group were specially chosen to do certain work and had met regularly for years. I noticed that she never carried notebooks or tape recorders, and when they left, they never spoke. They just nodded to me as I showed them out of the door. All were about Elizabeth's age, with the exception of 2 or 3 younger people, and that's all I know about them. What I felt," Noor went on, "is that Elizabeth is connected in some strange way to another group of people whom I have never met. She sometimes gets very excited when she receives certain letters. They come from all over the world, and she spends ages reading them in detail before sitting down at her desk to answer each one. It takes hours. I've learned that it is better not to disturb her when she is writing, as she becomes very cross and agitated if she is interrupted. I use that time to visit friends in London or to go to the theatre. Which reminds me, she said with a twinkle in her eyes, I had better get in touch with my friends when we get to Wales. They will be wondering what has happened to me, and none of them know about us yet. I think they'll find it strange after all this time. I haven't been with a man since I first went to Turkey. I was engaged to be married then, but that's another story, and I don't want to get into that now. But tell me a bit more about the time you spent with Elizabeth, I said. Surely you didn't just stay around that house for 2 years. What did you do with yourself? I told you, I spent time with friends, quite often, she said, and there's so much to do in and around London that it is hard to get bored. Elizabeth had an old car she lent me. There was also the shopping and cooking to get done, the house to be kept clean, visitors to be looked after, and so on. Actually, there's something else that I should tell you. You see, I was sent to Elizabeth after we last met to get myself together. You saw me in several different states in Turkey, but it has taken a long time to get stabilized. Elizabeth is a great teacher. I'm surprised in some ways that she didn't work with you more. But then there will be reasons for that, I'm sure, and time will tell. She did give me certain exercises, mainly with breathing and concentration. I spent many hours a week practicing them and studying different things that she said would help me help others in the long term. So all that took up a lot of time. No, I was never bored. It was not as though I just sat around the house all day long. I'm really grateful for the time I spent with her. And now that that time is over, I shall miss her awfully. So you will just have to stop being depressed and look after me, won't you? We talked late into the night. The landlord came in and lit a fire as the evenings were chilly. He and his wife then retired, showing us where to turn off the lights and explaining that they had to be up early. Mainly we talked about John. Noor had heard a lot about him, but had never met him herself. She related that Elizabeth has told her it would be necessary to learn a great deal about death and about dying, and that one day there might be an opportunity for Noor to understand how help could be given to those nearing death, if someone with knowledge and ability was there for them, to help with the fear that inevitably exists. I had personally experienced death on several occasions, and so this visit to John was not as worrying for me as it was for her. I was 13 years old the first time I saw a man die. I was with a young group of farmers who were shooting rabbits in a nearby field. One of them got overexcited and shot the man who was standing next to him. I was with him, holding his hand until he died. I can never forget the look on his face and the smile he gave me just before he passed. Long after Noor went to sleep, I lay awake, thinking about death and wondering how afraid of it I was, particularly now that I had fallen in love with her. I realized, perhaps for the first time, the truth of all the teachings about the necessity of being aware of death and of not wasting a moment of one's life. More than that, it became obvious how much time I had wasted in useless worry, even in that day. Before going to sleep, I went back over every minute of the day that I could recollect, until, little by little, I was able to rest. In the morning we drove on to Wales, stopping only once by the side of a stream to drink the coffee we had brought with us. Noor was very quiet. She had not had time to do her exercises and needed to work preparing herself. She asked me to stop the car just before we drove into the village where John lived. It is difficult to be totally present, Noor explained. So I always stop before I go to visit someone. It's a token of respect Elizabeth taught me. She absolutely insisted that I stop for a moment, even before entering her own house from doing the shopping, just so that I was in a thoroughly collected state. You try it. that is the end of chapter 7. Today is the 12th of April.